Welcome, friends. Welcome to another edition of Freeing the Body, Freeing the Soul. I'm your host, Dr. David, the Cutting Edge Doc, and here on Freeing the Body, Freeing the Soul, we do in-depth interviews with individuals that are doing cutting-edge work in the areas of healing, spirituality, and social transformation. I'm very excited about today's show. It's a little bit of a departure from the normal sort of hour and a quarter in-depth interview format. It's kind of a special edition because I have a very strong desire to introduce some new ideas to you, and there's an opportunity today to do that. Some of you know that one of the things that I do is I do healing work. I'm a holistic chiropractor, and the centerpiece of my practice is a form of energetically based healing that interfaces with nutrition and herbs and homeopathy called morphogenic field technique. And we have the opportunity today to speak with my mentor and the co-developer of morphogenic field technique, Dr. Frank Springob. And what catalyzed the desire for me to have this conversation is that I'm always looking for ways that work better to effectively communicate to other people about what we do and what we do that's different and I think has some unique advantages. And I've been noticing over the last year especially that there's been a real increase in interest in something called functional medicine as opposed to allopathic medicine. And it's definitely a movement in a direction that's probably positive, but for me, it isn't exactly where I want to hang my hat. And I thought that we could leverage the interest in functional medicine to build on that so that people will have an understanding of morphogenic field technique and energetically based healing that we can compare and contrast to functional medicine. So with that, I'm going to turn this show pretty much over to my friend and mentor, Dr. Frank Springob. So Dr. Frank Springob, welcome to Freeing the Body, Freeing the Soul, and why don't you take it away?
Okay, thank you, Dr. David. So this conversation was initiated by an email from Dr. David, and he was asking me about possibly having a conversation about functional medicine. Now, functional medicine is definitely, as he stated, a step in the right direction, because if you look at the allopathic model, they're always chasing symptoms. And if you have a visit to an allopathic physician, they tend to want to talk about one thing at a time. You know, they compartmentalize the body in that way. So they want to talk about your gallbladder, they want to talk about your heart, they want to talk about whatever one subject you're there to discuss with them. And it's very frustrating for the person to, especially my patients who are used to thinking of the body as a whole entity, because that's the way I've taught them over the last 42 years. They think more holistically than that. However, the current healthcare system is very distressing to them because what they're offered is not really what they've been trained to desire, and that is whole body healing and a tendency to be as natural as possible in their protocols. So very frustrating. I see functional medicine, desire for functional medicine to be a step in the right direction, because at least functional medicine does acknowledge that the body is a whole. And when you look at the body from a functional medicine perspective, you're going to look at how it all comes together. Now, I like to tell people about the laws of epigenetics. Epigenetic law is our law. We used to look at genetics as being the cause of many of our problems, but we now realize that our problems, health problems, are 98% epigenetic in origin, which means that our environment is affecting how our health is. So the good news is if you can control your environment, you can control your health. The bad news is if you're unaware of this and you don't choose or do anything to take control of your environment, then your health can degrade rather seriously, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it until you open your eyes and take a look at the way this is actually what the reality really is. So the field is a great tool to use for reading the environment, because everybody has a field of energy around their body, and everything in your environment puts out its own resonance. And so the field is a tool that was given to us by nature in order to pick up signals from our immediate environment and respond to them. So an example would be, you know, when you get out in the real world and you come in contact with another human, and you know, they're in your bubble, as we like to say, they're in your field, they put off a vibe that either draws you to them or repels you away from them. And that's an example that most people can relate to. But this happens in everything in our environment. And so animals use it, because I've watched deer eat my blueberries, and they're very selective about going for the ones that are ripe, the ones that are organic, as opposed to ones next door that are not organic and sprayed. And so they're very selective in choosing good things from their environment. Well, what they're reading essentially is that resonance, or that energy. So Einstein probably said it best when he talked about his theory of relativity and came up with the E = mc² math formula. And E being energy and M being the mass of matter times a constant squared tells you that energy essentially is matter. So if E = mc², E, if you take out the math formula part, is M. So M is matter, matter is you. And so you can control your the output of your matter as your body evolves from day to day by controlling the energy field around your body. Now, this is not really a surprise to anybody anymore, because it's well known in the world of science that this is the truth. Well, what we have is a system that doesn't really work with that. And if it was working with it, we wouldn't be doing a lot of allopathic medicine. We wouldn't be doing pharmaceuticals. We would be doing things that actually expand and balance your body's energy field. So this is the way I view functional medicine. Functional medicine, even though that's an improvement, they're still looking at M. In other words, they're looking at the matter of the person that they are analyzing. So they do a lot of testing, and they come to the conclusion that they're going to do an intervention of some sort that's going to, they believe, improve that person. In my thinking, the E eventually becomes the M, and if you can read the E, you're going to get to the problem a lot quicker, because energy is easy to read once you have the tools and the skills to do it. And of course, the other thing is, it's a lot less expensive. You don't spend a lot of time, number one, on pharmaceuticals that really don't solve the problem. They just mask symptoms. You also don't spend a lot of time and energy on very expensive diagnostic tests that don't really do much to change your health outcome. And finally, when you spend your healthcare dollar on something that actually moves you toward health, like the right whole food nutritional supplement, or the right herbal formulation, or the right homeopathic, you know, that's money better spent. Also, when you're able to read your environment, have your environment read for you by a practitioner like myself and Dr. David, who are skilled in this, you are taking their information that they're giving back to you. Essentially, they're just the messenger. They're reading it, and they can give you not only the right supplement, the right procedure to do, also they can give you the exact right lifestyle change you need to clean up your environment. So, for example, you know, I live on the relatively pristine Olympic Peninsula, and we do have a little bit of GMO farming going on, but not a lot. We mostly have organic farming going on here. But you go to Northern California, you have the Napa Valley, you have the Salinas area, you have the Central Valley, all heavily sprayed with pesticides and herbicides and a lot of GMO farming going on. That's not an environment that is conducive to health. And the health statistics from those areas are starting to show that. And when I come down to Northern California, and I do a lot of speaking down there, and you do the procedure, RMF energy procedure on these people, it's pretty obvious that there's something going on in their environment that's affecting their well-being, so their matter. And this is the emphasis you have to say. It's like, okay, your matter as you exist right now is the effect of your total environment. And if we can identify the energy of that environment and steer you away from those components, then we have a chance to improve your M, or your body itself, make your body more healthy. So this is a big contrast that I would have to say with what we do with energy and what they do in functional medicine, where they are looking at the matter first and then trying to figure out what the intervention is going to be to make those changes. Whereas we like to get right to what's the energy saying and what are the toxins, what are the immune challenges, and how we're going to change your diet and your lifestyle to create a bigger, more balanced energy field around your body, which is our ultimate goal.
What about the role of metaphysical factors influencing genetic expression?
Well, there's many factors that affect the size and balance of the field. And so the better off you are from a spiritual realm, the better off you're going to be in that realm as well. And different people emphasize it differently. In my role as teaching the expansion and balance of the field, and often I'm doing it for CEU credits, and those the curriculum has to be approved by a professional institution in order for practitioners to get credit for doing that. You've got to stay to things that you can prove with science. Well, E equals MC squared is science. That's, everybody accepts that. And so you tie it to that. Metaphysics a little harder to do. So I personally tend to be very spiritual. I'm not very religious, but I am very spiritual. But it's not something you can really get in front of an audience and teach unless it's something you're doing not for CEU credits, but where you're actually expressing your own belief system. I always like to say, when you're dealing with things that people can't see, like an energy field, some people consider that to be woo-woo, and there's different degrees of woo-woo. You can do woo-woo, woo-woo, maybe 4 woos, or you can do 1 woo, which is something that you can't see, but is definitely got a basis in science, and just stay to that, stick to that. So even though I acknowledge it and I support it, I do work a lot with emotional support, and I like people to follow their belief system, the thing that creates the best comfort for them.
The reason I bring it up is that in terms of the environment that influences the cell, I believe that there's getting to be better and better science that's demonstrating that the environment of the cell has a physical dimension and a metaphysical dimension to it. And that if we want to tell the truth about that, it's important to know that even if we decide in certain contexts not to talk about it, I think it's important to acknowledge in terms of where we're coming from as healers and guides. It's important to know that that is really the truth of it, that the environment of the cell, which catalyzes genetic expression in the moment, is both a physical and a metaphysical context.
Right. Well, of course, if you've ever read the book, The Holographic Universe, that was a great breakthrough in people starting to think more in those terms. And some of the experimentation that's been done with shooting electrons through looking for wave phenomenon or particle phenomenon, and they found that if you're not looking at it, it comes across as a wave, but if you are looking at it, it comes across as a particle. And the only variable there is if somebody's observing it. So if you're observing the experiment, you get one outcome, and if you're not observing the experiment, you get a different outcome. So what is that? That's something affected by consciousness. And scientific, can't deny it. That's scientifically proven.
What do you think we can do as energetically based practitioners to build more effective bridges of understanding with people that maybe are in the space where they're currently open to functional medicine and maybe beginning to feel maybe the limitations of that model to some extent? What have you found to be the most effective attitudes, tools, approaches for connecting with those people and building effective bridges so that there's more of an open-mindedness?
Well, that is always the challenge when you are trying to teach people about something that is not visible to them. That's a really tough communication. So you have to, in ways, make it real. So, you know, from the seminars, I like to do things like the energy ball. Sometimes I like to influence the flow of energy in the field, and you get a very dramatic muscle response testing reaction. And that's not really an explanation as much as it's an experience, and people have to have that experience. So if you can give them the experience and then you can give them the scientific basis behind the experience, that's probably the most powerful combination for getting people to ultimately understand. And then, of course, if they will open their mind, and you just have to open your mind to a crack, you know, you don't have to, doesn't have to be hugely open. It just has to be open enough to say, okay, I'm receptive, and you know, show me. And that is a problem. What's surprising, and always is to me, is that the people with the most education, until they get to a certain level of it, tend to be the biggest unbelievers, you know, and so they get overeducated. But one thing I learned about education is the more education you get, the more you realize how little you really know. And so you just keep trying, you keep looking, you look for applications, you look for ways to communicate. For example, right now I'm in the process of filming an 18-part video series that we're going to do for patient education. And it's going to start with just explaining energy to people. And then that'll be the first 6 videos. The next 6 videos are going to be about explaining some of the problems that we have in our environment. And the last 6 videos will be about talking about some of the solutions that we have to handle the problems that are being created in our environment by people who do it for profit, like, you know, Monsanto and DuPont and chemical companies that want you to think they're doing things in your best interest when in reality it's all bottom line. They will sell DDT any place in the world where it's not illegal, and everybody knows the consequences of that in this country because it's been banned for several decades now. But it isn't banned everywhere, and they'll sell it there. So it's all about the profit motive. It doesn't have anything to do with what's right, and you just have to understand that and accept those challenges if you're looking to create better health and a better world.
So as you're creating 18 videos, are you writing them yourself, or are you working with someone who has professional expertise in communicating effectively with the general public, or how is that being orchestrated?
Well, I'm not doing anything. I've tried it many ways. One of the ways I tried to do it last year was to do more social media stuff. Well, it's hard to find professional social media people that are educated enough about what you do to actually produce something that's effective. It's better to take somebody who has a good understanding of how to communicate and bring them in, and somebody who's really enthusiastic about it. So the enthusiasm is the most important thing. If you're like me and like you, and you know, your goal is to do what you can do while you're here to make this better for the next generation of people coming behind you, those are the kind of people you want to look for. And they're hard to find. They really are. It's been a frustration for me. I've been trying to teach the concepts for 10 years, and I've made incredible progress, but there's so much more of a job to be done. I'd like to feel better about it while I'm still here.
So how are you doing it this time?
No, just by breaking it into smaller pieces and letting people absorb it as they have time. In just my own experience in working with videos, about a 3 to 5 minute video, people will watch that. If you go beyond that, they aren't ready for it. You have to just give them one a day or one a week, and just slowly build their knowledge. And once you expand their mind, it can't shrink back. You're not going to shrink it back down again once it is expanded, but figuring out how to get it expanded is the challenge.
I think there's a lot to that, because I think for various factors, the attention span of the American individual has really reduced, and there's so much more chronic stress that people are having to deal with, and all sorts of pressures, that I think it is the challenge of our time, how to effectively extend invitations to people that actually are grounded in truth, when you have people that are probably the most brainwashed group of people. I mean, it's probably the first time in recent history where probably hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars per year are spent to condition their consciousness to think that something is real and something is not real. And so it's probably the heroic journey of our time, is to, how do you touch people's lives in meaningful ways and extend a gift that you've been given to other people, and at the same time support yourself and support your family, and be able to take a place in this world that gives you a platform from which to function effectively. I know 30 and a half years ago, when I became a doctor, I made a promise to God that I wouldn't sacrifice my values as a doctor, and that if it ever came to not being able to be a doctor and support my family, that I would do something else. But I'm aware of the pressures that most doctors are under to pay the bills, even if they did open up their consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think probably and they're related, I think probably the big challenge is how to effectively communicate with the public, which, if that challenge can be solved, goes a long way toward this other challenge about helping talented, well-meaning doctors who won't compromise their values to be able to also make a decent living.
Mm-hmm. Well, the internet is a great tool that we have now, and the great thing about it is you can't hide the truth. You know, they'll be out there and they'll spin their truth, and you see accusations of false news, and you turn into different news channels, and you'll hear the exact same story 3 different ways if you turn them to 3 different networks. And you know what it comes down to is, what's the agenda? You know, we're up against that factor with, you know, the nightly news. 80% of the commercials on the nightly news are sponsored by the drug industry. And so the drug industry is not going to come under the scrutiny of the news media, because that would be like biting the hand that feeds them. So you just have to look and see, you know, who's paying for what, and just be aware. It's not something that comes naturally to me. I've had to have awareness beaten into me. So, you know, my natural tendency is to always trust and suspect that everybody's got the same good intentions I do, but it turns out that it isn't true, and you just have to figure out how you're going to adapt to that and not let the world beat you down too much. But we do have some new tools. We've got some great new tools. We've got the internet. You can speak your truth, and there's some sites now where you can get your truth out there. The problem is getting everybody to go to your site and hear your truth. But the potential is there. You know, I look at some of the stuff that's going on, and I'm amazed by how effective the people are who know how to use that medium.
But I mean, one of the things that's really frightening is the type of censorship that's going on now on YouTube and Facebook, where if you have ideas that are perceived as threatening to the powers that be, they'll demonetize your YouTube channel. They'll fudge your statistics. They'll kick you off Facebook for a while. So there's a lot of truth tellers right now that are having really very challenging times.
Well, we have the new cryptocurrency based channel called Pop Chest, and so Pop Chest is no ads, no censorship. You just put your media up there, and you get the royalties you get, and it's a beautiful system. And so relief is coming, you know, for us.
How do you spell that?
POPCHEST.
Like popchest.com?
Right. If
Okay.
you go on there and type in M-field testing, you'll see a very familiar video there, David.
Okay. Because it seems like the more that quote unquote, the more the dark side puts the squeeze on, you know, it's the yin and yang of life. There's got to be, the phoenix has got to be rising somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, they're going to, one of the representatives of Pop Chest is going to be at Libertopia in San Diego. And so her name is Amy James, and she'll be speaking there.
Fantastic.
So opportunity for you to hear what she has to say, because that's going to be a very important part of getting our message out, I believe.
Great. Do you have any last words in this conversation for either the general public or for energetically based clinicians?
Well, energy is where it's going, and so hang in there, because they move from allopathic to functional, and the next step is to move from functional to energy. When they understand it, they have to understand it. And so my easiest way of explaining it is functional medicine, great, but you're still working on the matter side of the E equals MC squared, and you're not working on the energy side. So Einstein's emphasis was energy, and he just showed you how to get there. And they haven't moved that way yet. It took 20 years for Einstein's theory of relativity to be recognized in the scientific world. So we're early on, but you know, we hang in there, and we're making progress, and we'll arrive eventually. We'll all be better off for it.
Could you summarize one more time for the layperson? What are some of the main advantages of dealing with the energy side of the equation directly?
Well, the energy won't lie. That's the most important thing. You have to understand that matter is revealed by its energy. So when you have matter that has lack of integrity, something like GMO foods, the energy of that gives it away. So we knew GMO foods were a problem way before the general public did, because we were testing the energy of them. And so I participated in Prop 37 down in California when that was being done back in 2012. And then when they did it the next year here in Washington, and they did it the next year in Oregon, and I went in each one of those states and showed people the energy of GMOs. Now, you know, it wasn't effective enough to get people to understand it, because you don't have a big enough audience, and you don't have enough receptive people to hear your message. But eventually it comes around. We'll win it in the end. We just have to hang in there.
I think another good example was the work that you've done with smart meters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another example, because I didn't know anything about smart meters until that was brought to my attention, and the producer of that film asked if I could tell if smart meters had an effect on the human body. And I said, well, I don't really know anything about them, but I think they installed one in my office. Let me go check it out. And sure enough, and so Take Back Your Power, the documentary that was done on smart meters, shows my attempt to demonstrate the effects on dark field blood and how dramatic the effects were within 2 minutes of exposure to the smart meters. So being able to take those invisible things and turn them into real things, that's the challenge. And making it real to people is the challenge. And I work on it every single day. It's the thing that I start early in the morning, and I'm working on it till I go to bed at night, and trying to figure out how's the best way to communicate that.
Right.
And I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to keep doing it.
Well, Dr. Springob, thank you so much for taking some time today to speak with me and everybody who's listening and watching. And if people want to find out more about energetically based healing, or more specifically about the work that we do, that you co-founded, called Morphogenic Field Technique, besides giving my contact information, what are some other contact information points that you think would be useful for the viewer or the listener?
Well, like I say, you can go on to PopChest. Now, PopChest is, there's no ads on PopChest, but you do have to pay a nickel to watch each video. So you can get yourself a little account there with your card, or you could do they'll take Bitcoin or their own cryptocurrency. But we don't charge hardly anything, because the more important thing is the message. But still a nickel for each video. And so go to PopChest and type in M-Field testing, and you will see those videos. And we're producing more this weekend, and so we'll get those online and get those out as soon as we finish them and get them edited.
Okay, and then I'll put my contact information in the show notes below. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening or watching a special edition of Freeing the Body, Freeing the Soul, where we do in-depth interviews with individuals that are doing cutting-edge work in the areas of healing, spirituality, and social transformation. Today's been a little bit of a departure from the normal procedure, a little bit shorter, more pointed conversation with my friend and mentor, Dr. Frank Springob, and we've been talking about energetically based healing work, and we've been using the interest in functional medicine as a way to compare and contrast allopathic medicine, functional medicine, and energetically based medicine and healing work. So thank you for watching or listening. Thank you, Dr. Springob, and with that, we'll close with love and peace. Bye for now.